The discipline is essential in the Spiritual Aspirant, Part 5, Sri Muruganar.
Translated and presented by Robert Butler.
மன்னுகின்ற வெண்மணியாம் வேங்கடமன்னனே துன்னலாம் மைம்புலன் தோற்றிட இன்னல் தரும் மின்மினியாம் என் மனமங்கொழி உன் பதமா மின் சுடரில் வேண்டி விழுங்கே வேங்கடமன்னனே மன்னுகின்ற விண்மணியாம் வேங்கடமன்னனே துன்னலாம் மைம்புலன் தோற்றிட இன்னல் தரும் மின்மினியாம் இன்னல் தரும் மின்மினியாம் என் மனமங்கொழி உன் பதமா மின் சுடரில் வேண்டி விழுங்கு வேங்கடமன்னனே உன் பதமாமின் சுடரில் வேண்டி விழுங்கி
Eternal Son, O Venkata, our Lord, to save us from the senses' pressing thrall, show your love and swallow whole my troubled mind's faint firefly glow. In the sweet light your holy feet afford.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana. So, this is a prayer verse composed by Robert, and I have a quick question for him. So, Robert, what do you mean by firefly glow?
Well, a firefly is the ego. If you think of the ego, it's you're only aware of it in the darkness of ignorance when you're identified with the ego, and then you can see it. But when you see the light, when the light of the self comes in, it's completely eclipsed. So that it's a good analogy for the ego. And another thing is that firefly, it's not on all the time, is it? It goes on and off. The ego, between thoughts, deep sleep, and hopefully in self-attention, there is no ego. So that's another good analogy for the firefly being like the ego.
Good, thank you. That's a nice prayer. Let me get started with the neṟis. Today we're going to discuss 3 or 4 neṟis, starting with neṟi 13. Anand, please.
Sādhakar ulagiyar pathirgai moham ஒழியக் கடவர். சாதகர் உலகியல் பத்திரிகை மோகம் ஒழியக் கடவர்.
It behoves sādhakas, spiritual aspirants, to abandon the reading of periodicals and newspapers which lead to delusion.
It's a very important practical advice from Sri Muruganar. It applies even to this day, more so now. So we have a few comments I received from Robert on this. I'll let him read it.
In this comments, I say we, but really it's my own personal experience. So anybody that it doesn't apply to me, that's fine. But we say we because just to be inclusive, because I think this is generally most people's experience. Right. Underlying superficially simple neṟi are some very serious issues for a sādhaka. Our habit of consuming news media and so on a regular basis from the time we get up till the time we go to bed poses a serious problem for our sadhana. Along with newspapers and periodicals, we should also include all kinds of media that provide news, information, and entertainment. In other words, all media of a non-spiritual nature, whether it be delivered by newspapers and magazines, radio, TV, smartphone, computer, or artificial intelligent devices like Alexa and Google Assistant.
So basically avoid indulging in all sorts of
it's really the habit.
Distractions, right? All sorts
you know
of...
how we get up in the morning, oh, I'll put the weather on, or I'll listen to the news. I'm not really listening to it, but
right.
But you are, and it's a distraction.
Exactly. Please go ahead.
Continual exposure to and consumption of these only amplifies the erroneous sense of ourselves as self-determining, ego-driven individuals. We do not just listen to such media, but we often become deeply involved with them in the form of an inner conversation where we put ourselves in the place of the protagonists, whether they be politicians, talking head experts, sports people, film stars, or religious and community leaders. This typically goes on throughout the day for many of us, from the morning's breaking news to the late night roundup.
Okay.
And then we wonder why we are having so little success with our self-attention practice, which we have typically shoehorned into a couple of half-hour segments, which we proudly label meditation, and which are constantly interrupted by the buzz of useless information accumulated throughout the day and still flying around within our heads. In this way, we put ourselves on the back foot, as it were, never really allowing scope for our thoughts to subside, which is the goal of self-attention.
Right. So when you are reading, typically shoehorned into a couple of half-hour segments, I'm thinking, if that, you know.
If that, yeah.
Right.
Often you say, oh, well, you know, I'm
Yeah.
having dinner early. I'll have done the morning one. I won't do the evening one. We just
Right.
fool ourselves.
Exactly. And then I get this constant, you know, one of the constant comments I get is, oh, I don't have enough time.
Yeah.
Well, so that's where Muruganar is coming to help us here. Right.
Wait a minute, you're busy. You can't be wasting your time meditating.
Is there any other personal anecdotes or incidents you want to give us to illustrate this further?
Well, I would like to sort of relate some of my own personal experience, and it's a bit of a digression, but I will get back to the neṟi in the end. When I had my first spiritual insights, would have been about 1969, I started exploring all kinds of paths in the West and Middle East with the Gnostics, Sufism, Kabbalah, right over to Japan, Zen Buddhism, the Taoism in China. All these things attracted me, and I would go chasing down all these avenues. So I think in a way that people that come to these groups are in a very good position because they've come to the direct path straight away without having to go down all these side avenues that I went down. Bhagavan says that, yes, all these paths lead to self-realization, but only by virtue of the fact they all eventually lead back to the path of self-attention, which is obvious when you think about it. once you've studied Ramana for a bit. So anyway, eventually, after about 10 years of pretty fruitless activity, I kept on studying all these things. I went to India. I arrived at the ashram, and 10 years later, I discovered Bhagavan's teaching. And a good way of why didn't it happen before is because probably my mind was too outgoing. I wasn't ready for it. And proof of this is that when I got to the ashram, I realized I'd actually read A Search in Secret India years before, possibly as a teenager. And I was fascinated by all the stories about the Shankaracharya and the god in Madurai temple, all these. But the little bit at the end with the little man in the ashram, it didn't attract me at all. It doesn't. So I'd read it and I thought, what a fool, you know, all these years. And I had it. I had the book in my hands, but I ignored the important part. Anyway, just to bring it back to the Neṟi, after about 4 months at the ashram, I noticed how quiet my mind was getting because there were no media there at all. Absolutely nothing. There was a few newspapers, but they're all in Tamil. Sometimes we got the Indian Express or the Hindu. And I remember Davy Godman had a little transistor radio. We used to listen to the football results on Saturday for 20 minutes. But that virtually no media. And that was that really helped to quiet my mind. Just brings us back to the Neṟi. And the other thing that really helped me was there were no mirrors anywhere. In the West, everywhere we go, we're presented with images of ourselves. Every shop window, there are mirrors everywhere, clothes shops. Where I stayed at Mrs. Osborne's house, and I didn't have a bathroom. I just had a little enclosure outside where I get my water from the well, fill a bucket, and then take it into this little side room and have a bath. But there wasn't even a mirror. I would shave by touch if I shaved. So basically, this absence of mirrors and absence of media was a great aid to me at that time. And that's about all I was going to say, really.
Well, that's good. And I personally think, there's a lot of time we're wasting, and each person has to see, how they're wasting time. The smartphone is a big waste of time. The good news is there are also solutions to get away from it. Now these days you can track the time that you spend on your smartphone and maybe have some goals, cut it down. If it's 3 hours a day, make it 2.5 hours and go down to 2 hours and go down to 1.5 hours a day or something like that. And I think having those goals will really help getting away from it. Definitely we need to stay away from the media, social media, it's like Facebook, WhatsApp, and so forth. That they're all waste of time. Now, Robert also brought up this quote from Olivil Odukam, which is a scripture in ancient classic. Sometimes Bhagavan used to refer to this. Go ahead, Robert, please.
In those who, wearied by ritual activities, come to him asking for instructions, the illustrious one, that means the Guru, fosters the bliss of the self so that they dwell in silence. He is the true Guru. As for the rest, know that insofar as they cause the slightest movement in the mind of their disciples, they will be like Brahma, the creator of worlds, and the Lord of death, Yama. Now, this is a quote. This is a quote given by Bhagavan in Day by Day, and he put great store by it, and he quotes it in 1946.
I think there is also a GVK verse to this effect, Guru Ashaka verse. So basically, you're just going a step above, like, that if someone is acting as a guru, but is teaching you all sorts of methods which actually take you away from self-attention, they're not really helping you, right? That's the message you're trying to.
Exactly.
Yeah. Good. Any questions or comments on this Neṟi? Anybody wants to particularly want to hear anyone share their personal experience and how they use time management to attend to their self?
This is Stephen.
Yes, please.
I'll just give you a simple one.
Yeah, sure.
My TV is now located in its original box in the garage.
Right, exactly. That's excellent.
That was a huge step for me to step away. The smartphone is going to be a bit more difficult because it's multi-purpose, and it brings the benefits of connection with family. And it also makes it very easy to flip right to something else that's distracting. So it's a conscious effort of being disciplined, regardless of what it is.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah. Here it's 2021, and I want to say I don't even know how Facebook works, how Twitter works. So I'm not in any social media, and I'm not even on WhatsApp. So I think all of these have really helped me find the time to learn and practice Bhagavan's works. That's my own personal experience here. But there's still a lot of ways that I could work on, and I'm constantly, trying on, working on it. Let's now go to the next Neṟi. Anand, please.
Okay. அறிவை தவிர்த்து மற்ற அகிலம் ஒன்றுமில்லை. அறிவை தவிர்த்து மற்ற அகிலம் ஒன்றில்லை.
Apart from awareness, nothing else whatsoever exists.
So all is just awareness. Apart from awareness, nothing else whatsoever exists. So with regards to this, what does what does Sri Muruganar mean by awareness? So this is a quote from Bhagavan. Please go ahead, Robert.
Absence of thought does not mean a blank. There must be one to know the blank. Knowledge and ignorance are of the mind. They are born of duality, but the self is beyond knowledge and ignorance. It is self-luminous. There is no necessity to see the self with another self. There are no two selves. What is not self is non-self. The non-self cannot see the self. Sight or hearing there cannot be. Self lies beyond, all alone as pure consciousness, which we have translated as awareness here to distinguish the transitive consciousness that Michael talks about.
Right. So the awareness that Sri Muruganar refers to in this Neṟi is the intransitive awareness, the one fundamental awareness that lies all and that underlies everything. So the next part in the same Neṟi, Muruganar said, all that is only awareness and nothing else whatsoever exists. So why does he say that? Why nothing else whatsoever exists? So to understand that, we need to understand what is meant by reality in this context. What is really true? So on 4th February 1935, a devotee once asked Bhagavan, what is the nature of reality? To which Bhagavan responded,
Existence without beginning or end, eternal. Existence everywhere, endless, infinite. Existence underlying all forms, all changes, all forces, all matter, and all spirit. The many change and pass away, phenomena, whereas the one always endures, noumenon. Noumenon means the Godhead.
Yeah. So what is real is that which doesn't change, and also it is self-luminous. Right. So because only consciousness truly fits the definition of reality, that is the only truth, and nothing else whatsoever exists. And that's why Muruganar mentions that in his Neṟi or discipline.
Because you can't think of anything that doesn't have an attribute apart from your own being.
Exactly.
Which you can't even see because you are it. So you can easily prove to yourself that nothing exists, because the only thing that you actually know is your own being. Everything else is an appearance.
Exactly. Good. So at this point, I'll just open it up for any comments or any questions.
I have a question for Dr. Butler.
Mhm.
Yeah, basically, I heard his experience when he went to the ashram, and it called my attention the fact that you mentioned that some discomfort that would city people experience if we went to an ashram. For example, the lack of having the private bathroom, for example. So I started thinking, well, we are used to so much comfort. I am included in that. And I wouldn't even dream of going camping if there is not air conditioning or things like this.
I took joy in it. I stayed in a room in Mrs. Osborne's house, and when I went back 20 years later, they showed me around, and they'd actually made it into a broom cupboard. They blocked it up on the outside and made a door on the inside. It was just big enough to hold a few brooms. I didn't have a mattress of any kind. I slept on a straw mat with just one blanket over me because I just felt. I mean, Bhagavan says somewhere that, why do these men that keep their arm up in the air for 5 years, he says, no, they're regarded as, it's their faith, they're regarded as their achievement to do that. The yogis that do that kind of thing, or they never sleep, or they never sit down, or whatever. There are certain things that bolster your commitment. And for me, one was sleeping on a concrete floor with no mattress for 3 years. So the discomfort is a comfort.
Yeah, but my question has to do as to whether do you think having some type of discomfort would help you achieve this contact with your real self? Like, for example, not having the luxury of taking a long bath, for example, not being able to shave yourself, for example, things like this. I can see how not using the cell phone.
No, it would only help you if it gave you joy. If it caused you distress that you couldn't have a bath or couldn't shave, then it's just going to fill you full of thoughts about, oh, I really like to have a bath. It's not going to help to deprive yourself forcefully against your own will, as it were. I don't think it would help at all. Does that?
Okay, all right. Well, thank you. Yeah, because I was thinking the more
your thoughts.
The more natural you live, the more you realize Bhagavan and Muruganar words that nothing
yes,
else
absolutely
awareness. So perhaps there will be a way of training our mind to get it really to control it and show them that all this is just not real.
Yes, but it should come out of your devotion or your practice. You shouldn't impose it on yourself, is what I'm trying to say. Otherwise, it won't sit. It won't work. That kind of deprivation has to be something that you do as a gift of Bhagavan, or as a part of your practice, or as a devotional.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. So we have to be minimalistic, but rather than forcing it, as we progress spiritually, we will automatically start embracing it.
There's an interesting Sufi story. Well, it'll take me a minute to tell it, but there was a man going in search of an enlightened being, and he went to see this Sufi Jnani, and he was at home with his wife eating grapes, and he was on a nice couch. And so the Jnani told him, gave him his teaching, and the guy said, fine. He went off and went to this other Jnani that lived in a cave, not with wearing a loincloth, drinking water, eating scraps, with absolutely no comfort. And so he gets there and he sits down and he says, well, you really are a Jnani. The last guy I went to see was having a really good time. And the guy said, no, you don't understand. I can't do what he does. I can't live amongst those comforts and still be detached. Therefore, I am the lesser man. Does that make sense?
It does. It's a very good example.
But it's not mine. It's probably Rumi or one of those guys. But it's always stuck with me. It's not an excuse to go and pamper yourself, but it's a warning that deliberate almost self-harm is just pointless and damaging to yourself and other people.
It just has to be natural.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. So with that, let's go to the next Neṟi. Anand, please.
நெஞ்சை ஒளித்து ஒரு வஞ்சகமில்லை. நெஞ்சை ஒளித்தொரு வஞ்சகமில்லை.
Robert?
There is no deceit which we can conceal from our own heart.
Yeah.
I was just looking at the tongue.
There is no deceit which we can conceal from our own heart. It just reminded me of the Thirukkural. It's a set of couplets by Sage Thiruvalluvar. Vanjamanathan padittrolukkam boodangal aindum ahatte nahum, which means a deceiver's own 5 elements remain undeceived by his double-dealing mind and silently mocking. So we just can't escape that. I mean, there's always what they say, your own conscience is watching you at all times. Anyone wants to share their experience on this? Did you have any comments, Robert? It's pretty clear, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we all understand the way that we all try to fool ourselves, but it doesn't take us long if we're intelligent to realize that the game we're playing and to stop doing it. But there is another Neṟi later on we'll come to. We can talk more about this. Neṟi 25, and it says we can't hide from God either, because God knows what we think.
Exactly.
So we will be talking on this topic again later.
So there's no such thing as privacy, absolute privacy. Somebody's watching you always.
There was Cicero, the famous Roman orator. He said, "You should try to live as if we're on a stage with everybody watching us." Or,
right.
Nothing can be hidden. Nothing needs to be hidden if your conduct is pure. Obviously, certain things, but
that's good. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. So now let's go to the last Neṟi for today. Anand?
Yeah. Muttil enai moondrum adakam. Muttil enai moondrum adakam.
Yeah.
All the other 3, virtue, wealth, and pleasure, are contained within the 4th, which is liberation.
Yeah. So this goes through the basic concept of what is called purushartha, sort of the 4 legitimate goals as spelled out in the Vedic philosophy, which is dharma, artha, kama, moksha, virtue, wealth, pleasure, and liberation. There is a quote from Sage Avvaiyar, Tamil saint, who beautifully explains these 4 purusharthas in this verse. We'll come to the translation soon. I'll just let us listen to this first.
ஈதல் அறம் தீவினை விட்டு ஈட்டல் பொருள் எஞ்ஞான்றும் காதல் இருவர் கருத்து ஒருமித்து ஆதரவு பட்டதே இன்பம் பரனை நினைந்து எம்மூன்றும் விட்டதே பேரின்ப வீடு பரனை நினைந்து இம்மூன்றும் விட்டதே பேரின்ப வீடு.
Which means to give is virtue, aram, or dharma. To accumulate possessions through honest actions is wealth, or porul, or artha. To love as a devoted couple whose minds are harmoniously conjoined is pleasure, inbam, or kama. And to dwell upon the Lord, abandoning these three, is the supreme bliss of liberation, vidu, or moksha. I think no one has better explained in a very succinct way than Aware. She really captures the essence of it. And what Sri Muruganar is trying to stress here is that all the three, meaning virtue, wealth, and pleasure, once we dwell upon the Lord, all of these three, we gradually and slowly, abandon it. And what is left is the bliss of liberation. So I will see if Robert has any comments on this.
Yeah. When we say abandon, what we're abandoning is the ego. It doesn't mean that you've got to leave your wife, or you've got to give away your mobile phone, or you've got to. Basically, once the ego is gone, your karma will take you where you need to go. Your pleasure will still be pleasure. It'll be much greater pleasure than you ever had before, but it won't be ego-driven pleasure. Wealth will come to you as you need it, no more, no less than what you need. And what was the other one? Aram, you will naturally give because you don't see people as different from yourself. What you have is theirs and you share. So basically, people can be put off thinking, well, I really want liberation, but I don't want to give up everything in life. Well, that's why it's non-duality. It's not singularity. Non-duality contains both. Once the ego goes, but until then, this is an impossible concept, basically.
Right.
Anybody so that's why we need to work on self-attention, which will wear away the ego. Tenda, worn away, as Manika Vacha says. Wear it away. Till it gives up and gets sucked into the self.
Right. Any comments or questions on this?
Yeah, in the Vedantic literature, the path for a sadhaka would be to have these, to give, to earn money, and to be, leading a family life. All that is based on the very first of the four qualities, aram, the dharma. So dharma artham, dharma kama will lead you to moksha. That is based all your activities like earning money or enjoying based on dharma. So
yeah, so those two go into that. And
yeah, so we add the dharma to the other two, and then
yes, that's a good way of looking at it.
The other comment with aware is the word weed has two meanings. One is the place of living. The other thing is just to give, the state of giving up, the state attained after you give up everything. So that's why the Tamil says, "Immundrum vittade perinba veedu." So veedu has a root in vittadu, that is vidapattadu veedu. So automatically it means that moksha is to get out of this entire cycle of birth and death through these various dharma-based actions, and then automatically you would be liberated out of this samsara.
Yeah, that's nice. The sort of the inner meaning, or the vida itself says it all, right? The very word vida, which means liberation, just just letting go of everything else. With the understanding of what Robert explained, that the main thing that you let go is the ego. Good. Any other comments, questions?
Yes. Letting go of the ego.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm connected live from Baltimore, Maryland. I'm not in Houston today.
Okay.
So I'm with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm with my mom. And I'm watching her in her senior years. And so I'm here to support her through some health issues and things. I'm observing her letting go of her ego.
Mm.
She's 87. And to hear her speak in terms of what we're studying today is amazing.
Right.
And so the comment that got me the most is, my mom was a pageant beauty when she was younger. She was absolutely gorgeous. People would stop her on the street just to compliment her. And to hear of her speak of that in the past, and she's so unattached to that, is remarkable. And that is just representative of her life. She's a hyper helper. It's always about giving. And so all of those attachments that one could be, she is moving in her natural state into not being attached to so many things other than her health and well-being, and my being here. So I'm kind of moved by this statement today.
Right, it connects. Thanks for sharing, Stephen.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So with that, if there are no further comments, we will adjourn this session.